I'm going to go ahead and get started right on time. Welcome everyone to the Get Smart on Smart City Initiatives webinar. This topic was sparked from the request and interest of the crew members of Greater Philadelphia Network. So thank you to all of our crew members and our fellow colleagues from the CRE industry for joining us today. My name is Kim Hamilton, proud member of crew and a representative of my company, Advantage Sport and Fitness. And before we started today, we have the president of our crew, Greater Philadelphia Network, Rosemary Liberty.
Hi. Marinella. Okay, good. I was going to say Marinella. We just turned you a little girl. Sorry, people. My name is Rosemary Liberty. Like Kim said, I'm the president this year of Crew Greater Philadelphia. I'm also a partner for my day job, partner with the law firm of Dilworth Paxson LLP. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, Kim for setting this up, and our panelists for their time. So we always like to start out thanking all of our sponsors. I'm going to ask Kim, because for whatever reason, I'm unable today to share my screen properly. So I'll ask if she could share her screen real quick so we can just put up our sponsors. And I'm going to run really quickly through them. So our premier lead sponsors, Berkadia, Skyscraper sponsors, Brandywine Realty Trust, Capstan, Sonero, Dilworth Paxson, First American Title Insurance Company, Herman Miller, KSS, Target Building Construction, White & Williams, and Wisfis Bank. Our high-rise sponsors, Archer, Brookfield Properties, Clemens Construction Company, Elliott Lewis, Fidelity National Title and Chicago Title Insurance Company, Fox Rothschild, Irwin and Layton, J. Davis, NFI, O'Donnell and Nacarado, Skanska, and Spectrum. Our groundbreaker sponsors, Equus Capital Partners, Greyhawk, Hayworth, Land Services USA, and NV5 and Clark. Our affiliate sponsors, Advantage Sport and Fitness, Court, Interface, Rethink Innovations, and Trans-American Office Furniture. So we thank all of our sponsors. We could not do it without you, especially in this difficult year. I'm going to turn it back over to Kim and get the webinar started off. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. So Smart Cities, to start the conversation, is a global conversation right now and is happening at all scales. We have 3 people here who can help us understand what's happening at a global level around smart cities and what that means for cities like Philadelphia. I'm excited to introduce our panelists to our Zoom audience. Each woman, experts in their field and pursuing smart city missions and initiatives independently within their own organizations and collaboratively with each other and with outside companies. Please note that the Q&A chat will be open and we will do our best to get to questions at the end. If you do have additional questions that does not get answered, there is a short survey that will pop up at the end of the webinar, and there will be space for you to ask a question there. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. First, we have Eloise Young. She's a Senior Vice President of Planning and Information for Philadelphia Gas Works. Eloise, can you give us a little bit more detail on your role at PGW?
Sure. First, I just want to say it's a real honor to be here today talking to crew. So in my role, I'm responsible for technology, strategic planning, business process optimization. And what that is we basically pull teams together from different departments around the company, and we streamline and then document business processes. And then we have the enterprise PMO. And we raise the bar in terms of how the company manages projects by giving them a standard toolkit to work from. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Thank you, Eloise. So happy to have you. Natalia Olson. She is a serial entrepreneur with 1 years of experience working with international, regional, and local entities in Latin America, Central Europe, Asia, and the US. So Natalia, can you please tell the audience just a little bit more about what you're involved in?
Sure. And greetings from Barcelona, Spain, one of the most amazing cities in the world. So I started several companies. I'm an urban planner by background. And so what I've been doing since I used to work in the Obama administration as the SBA administrator for region around Philadelphia and many other states. But The last company I started is called Disruptive Factory. We're working with disruptive technologies in order for us to be able to meet the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, a agreement that we were able to really get together on 2015, which drives a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. How do we not only create better cities, but how do we actually create better climate and better environmental situations for the future? I'm an advisor for the World Bank, as well as I'm on the board of the Smart Cities Works Accelerator based in Washington, D.C. I'm also the ambassador for innovation for the Silicon Valley Forum. So it's all about learning what I learned in Philadelphia and getting out there to the world and seeing what is out there and bring it back home to the U.S. So excited to be here. Thank you again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natalia. And then, of course, another fellow Philadelphian, we have Emily Yates. She's a Smart City Director for the City of Philadelphia. We'll dive into a little bit more about some of your initiatives, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Excited to be here as well. So thank you for inviting me to join this conversation. I started with the City of Philadelphia just about a year ago, where I was tasked to implement the Smart City PHL roadmap, which was officially launched in February of 2019 with an executive order by Mayor Kenny. Prior to starting with the city, though, my professional experience has been cross-sector. I've worked for private companies, I've worked for other cities, I've done consulting, you name it, I've kind of been in that space. And I've also had the value of working at a variety of scales. So I've worked at hyper-local all the way up to transatlantic, where I've helped facilitate the development of policies and programs that make cities smarter, more sustainable, and livable. And I'm really excited to bring that kind of systems approach that I've learned over my professional experience here to Philadelphia, where I'm leveraging partnerships like with PGW and other organizations and using innovation to help improve the quality of life for all of our residents here in Philadelphia. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you guys today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. So to kind of kick off the panel, we'll kind of take it from a global view and we'll direct our first question to Natalia. Again, like we've said, Natalia is currently in Barcelona, so lucky you. And you're kind of at the heart of the smart city world. Can you share some of what you're seeing in cities globally around smart cities and the role your company plays in the space? You're still on mute, just real quick.
So just to let folks know, we are going to be having the largest Smart City Expo in Barcelona. It's going to be virtual, so now we really can be on board on November 9th to the 10th. And so it's an interesting experience because it is the largest. We get about 30,000 people from every country. And why I'm saying that is because we have about 50 countries, representatives from different governments, just to come to share experiences, share technology, see what for example, Doha is looking at blockchain. Munich is looking at faster trains. San Francisco is trying to figure out between San Francisco and LA a lot faster mobility. And so what's important here is about sharing information. And what we've been able to see across all these discussions has been, from a policy perspective, how do we find the financing? How do we promote research and development between our scientists, our technologists, and our entrepreneurs to be able to have that experience, abroad? Sometimes, and just to give you a little bit of background, I used to work with this company out of New Jersey. I used to use solar power in order to be able to have clean water. This particular company became very popular in Jamaica, in Mexico, and different countries, rural areas where you couldn't access clean water. So the technology that we have today can be very used appropriately and used to the best advantage in other places that might need it more. So a couple projects, for example, what we've seen, especially in the pandemic, has been focusing on supply chain. How do we get that last mile? How do we get folks to be able to deliver the last package, especially for places that we don't have the infrastructure? So I'm starting to garner these ideas about infratech, like infrastructure technology, which I think is going to be key, because we've been talking about mobility, right? The sharing economy was triggered by our access to data. And Philadelphia was a pioneer. I mean, I remember when Philly Car Share, when DVRPC gave money for Philly Car Share to be able to start, compete with Zip. And now we have a whole different mindset of what information we share in order for us to get that. And so with that in mind, the world of mobility has completely just, transcended. It's been tremendous. And we have autonomous vehicles, but we don't have the infrastructure to be able to support autonomous vehicles. I mean, imagine a car going down, my God, from little streets in Philadelphia, trying to turn or watch out for people. It's tough. And so I think that there's a lot of innovation there, which I've been seeing a lot, because we're starting to see that there's been investment in this. And so I think that there's a lot of really cool projects, but at the same time, we need the right technology to support the infrastructure for something as simple as autonomous vehicles, right? Now we talk about drones, and we talk about access and supply, and for crew, especially delivery, right? How do you create developments that actually can be designed and planned for the future? So there's a really amazing things happening around the world, and I think that Philadelphia has a great opportunity to bring people as a way to create business attraction and figuring out new ideas.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, collaboration is key. I've learned that from talking to all three of you. So Emily, you've had a lot of experience working with multiple cities to exchange best practices and smart city policies. And now you're leading the effort here in Philadelphia. Can you share what smart city means in Philadelphia and where, smart city means in PHL, where Philadelphia is in their smart city journey?
Sure. I think whenever I talk on panels, I always try to kind of set the stage for the definition of smart cities from where Philadelphia stands, because I think like sustainability, like resiliency, everybody has a slightly unique definition to smart cities. So in our smart city roadmap, we define a smart city as a city that uses integrated information and communication technology, so ICT, to support the economic, social, and environmental goals of its communities. And it's a pretty, generic, I would say, definition. And it really puts technology at the forefront of our definition of what a smart city is. But however, and apologies, I have a bit of a cold, so I'm sucking on a cough drop, which I always find not to be good. But anyway, as we continue to move forward with the implementation of projects and programs over the past year, what we've noticed is that our definition has really shifted and pivoted from a focus on technology and data to more of a focus on a human-centered approach and fostering economic growth and improving quality of life through the efficient use of resources that are existing and new. And that's actually aligning more, I think, with the European definition of how smart cities has been for quite a while. We're a little bit of a laggard here in the United States in that space. So we're really having much more of a human-centered focus as we're trying to move projects forward. In terms of Philly and our smart city implementation, we're still in the really early stages. I mean, we just launched just over a year ago, so about a year and a half ago, and we really didn't start facilitation or implementation until I came on board in October of 2019. But we've used that to our advantage. We were a laggard in this space to start off with. We didn't start our smart city journey until 2017. When we started to develop our roadmap over the course of 2 years and intense community engagement. And it wasn't a bad thing for us. In our case, we recognized that, we acknowledged it and said, that's okay, because we're going to learn from what other cities have done and not make the same mistakes. So we somewhat leapfrogged in that sense. And we were able to take our time and develop a strategy that works for Philadelphia and ensures that all of our work is locally inspired. We're not Silicon Valley, we are Philadelphia, and it's a very unique situation that we come from. We want to be equitable, innovative, and collaborative. To your point, we cannot do this on our own. So we wanted to be very clear in calling that out. And in turn, by being kind of a laggard in this space, we were able to recognize that we didn't want our strategy to be prescriptive and to say, these are the projects you need to do. Rather, the strategy is responsive, which has been great in our current situation. It allows us to adapt to what's happening in cities, which are not static beings, but really fluid spaces. And so we have larger scale projects like every city. We're currently in the process of launching an LED street lighting upgrade RFP, which will be essentially a network backbone to all of our smart city efforts, and is a huge, massive infrastructure investment in the millions, and will be really great for the city. But we also have a lot of smaller projects that we've been able to launch in response to situations created by COVID and the Black Lives Matter uprising. So we've used and partnered with Penn State University, Accenture, and SEPTA to use AI and machine learning to determine the effect of teleworking on public transit and what that means for their services. But then we also were able to realize on the city side that that information is valuable to our revenue department to help us determine and predict future revenues because of the wage tax and the effect that teleworking will have on the wage tax. We've been able to look at projects that address spatial inequities in cities by utilizing AI machine or visual machine learning again to capture microscale data that we can then use to connect to things like comparing privileged and underprivileged communities and how we invest as a city. And then we're also utilizing programs that allow for more effective budgeting in times where as a city, we need to be very precise and clear on why we are prioritizing certain funding mechanisms within our budget. We had a $750 million shortfall this year, which is pretty drastic in a city that already has a very tight budget. And so because of our flexibility and our smart city roadmap, we've really been able to adapt to what the current situation is pretty fluidly.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And also, Eloise, you've worked with Eloise, Emily, and Eloise have worked together. Eloise is actually probably our truest Philadelphia native. And you have worked for the PGW for quite some time, and you are a member of the Smart City PHL working group. As the largest municipality-owned gas utility in the country, can you share how PGW is looking to technology and data as a way for improving services to customers?
Absolutely. And, you know, when you talk about technology and service to customers, the first thing I think about is our phone system. You know how sometimes you call a company and you realize that there's going to be a wait time, and sometimes the phone system will voice to you how long your wait is going to be, and it'll give you some options. This is, by the way, this is a very painful story that I'm getting ready to tell you, something that I really screwed up. So our phone system does that thanks to an add-on. So a couple of years ago, we did a major upgrade of our system, our phone system. We didn't just upgrade it, we were really putting in a new system. And when I looked at the new system, it had that virtual hold and, you know, call waiting management feature. So I said, you know what, we're not going to spend money on this add-on. We can save tons of money if we just use the functionality in this new system. So we tested, everything seemed beautiful. We go live with the new phone system. I think I'm the diva, I'm saving all this money. Everything is good until it got cold. Whenever it gets cold, our call volume goes way up. And all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. Customers were waiting for hours and hours. And then like the thing would voice back, you know, let people schedule callbacks. We weren't calling. Sometimes we didn't ever call back. Sometimes it was like hours later. Call center employees had to work, you know, way tons of overtime. And it took us weeks to get that add-on, you know, clipped back onto the new system. So I can tell you from painful experience that that is a piece of technology that greatly improves the customer's phone experience and significantly reduces their wait times. And then data, you know, in terms of data, you would be surprised at how complicated it is to make sure that we have the right number of employees with the right skills in the right place at the right time to meet our customers' appointment windows. And the way we do that is we really rely on analytics. So we look at weather patterns over time, and we look at work order histories over time. And then we look in our GPS and GIS systems, and we pull out some geospatial data, put that all together, and then we project our workload, and we base our field service staffing levels on those estimates, and it is surprisingly accurate. So those are my examples.
That's awesome. I mean, and that's, you know, I've learned so much that, like, when you say smart city, it's such this broad topic, and it's really just incorporating technology into all these different pieces and workflows to make organizations more efficient and to, you know, make things easy or easier. You know, in saying that, I'll go back around to each of you, but I have a question for all three of you. And, From a large scale perspective, why are smart city initiatives so important for the economic development and growth of a city? Emily, let's lead with you.
Well, I think for me, it comes back to a systems approach to solving challenges, that smart cities aren't successful if you're working in a silo. You really need to factor in the whole process and how you get people invested and how they buy in and own these projects. I think a lot of times we look at the direct benefit, the direct department that benefits or the organization without thinking of the broader application and the needs, because you need somebody who knows how to install and maintain the technology. You need somebody who knows how to monitor and capture the data. You need somebody who knows how to use that data. And so it's just, there's a lot of opportunities within the supply chain of applying a smart cities, in my opinion.
Awesome. And I'll spin the question to you as well, Natalia. So again, why are smart city initiatives so important for the economic development and growth of a city?
Well, it's 70% of the population in the world is actually going to be in cities. We've seen that pressure over the last 20 years. 30, 40 years ago, we had policies in place. The wage tax was one of them. We had an entire group of folks leaving the city. And then, 10, 12, 15 years ago, we had a lot of young people coming back to the city, bringing back that energy, that enthusiasm. Younger generation didn't really need cars. They really they wanted to be near real cool things were happening. When I was a planning commissioner in Philadelphia, we were trying to figure out what are the industries that were so important, and arts was amazingly important. It turns out that 1 in every 6 jobs in Philadelphia are in the art spaces and creativity spaces. So that really, and manufacturing was another one. So we had a lot of urban manufacturing happening. In South Philly, there was this place that used to do these little screws done by the community there. And it's just, and we have the biggest maternity. I'm sorry, I'm going back to being in Philadelphia again. Producer of maternity clothing. And so there was a lot of things happening from an economic perspective of why cities. We have the infrastructure for it. We have the access. And I think this is where we really see cities, and especially being in Europe, cities here are 1,000 years old, and they haven't been abandoned. They're still there, and they've trying to figure out how to make it happen. I'm glad, Eloise, you mentioned the phone, because for example, the Mobile World Congress is a big event. It's all about smartphones and how do we figure out 5G in the future. And cities are actually starting to look at 5G. How are we going to have that access to the internet and really clear access to everyone, right? So initiatives like when we did in New York, I think it was 6 years ago, of trying to figure out access. I know that Mayor Nutter was trying to get access for the internet for everyone. And so there's how do you make cities smarter? Well, you have to make people smarter about the efficiencies that they have to ask for as citizens, right? Our permitting process can be done so much more efficiently if we add technology to it. But to Emily's point, human-centered. What are the citizens really looking for? That's why I've been working a lot with the blockchain community. Transparency is what makes blockchain being really popular right now, because it brings transparency and it brings efficiency in many different systems. So there's a lot of things that need to happen, but cities are the heart of the regions. They all, when we look at the design from a design perspective, cities are at the heart, and we grow from them. And we're not competing, from a perspective of competition. I got this was 15 years ago. I flew to Munich, and I could buy at the airport a ticket to Madonna di Campiglio in Italy. So, from that point that I could buy the train ticket, the bus ticket, and even rent a bike, all from the one point. And these are countries that didn't talk to each other for a long time. And also for Jersey and Pennsylvania to be able to cooperate, Philadelphia is the heart of it, right? So how do we get beyond those borders and figure out how cities actually bring together, different communities across the board?
Yeah, absolutely. And Eloise as well, you know, kind of seeing, you know, the growth in the city of Philadelphia, you know, why do you find smart city initiatives to be so important?
You know, I agree with everything actually that Emily and Natalia said. I think working with smart cities in Philly, the thing that I've enjoyed the most is how we frame problems. Because I think, like Natalia said, it's all about, you know, what are the people looking for? And I've really enjoyed that these elegant little solutions that we're coming up with are basically solving problems that are coming from the people with solutions that resonate with people. You know, we're not drinking tap water. We think we have to buy bottled water. Like real problems, you know, waste is a real problem, very real problem. Streets, you know, the conditions of the streets. So I think that it's very important that people feel like we're being heard and our problems are being solved. So I think that's actually my favorite thing about smart cities.
Yeah.
And sorry, if I can just chime in really quickly, because
Please.
to build on what these ladies have said, I mean, again, agreeing with all of it, I think when you're looking at what youth are looking for in cities that they want to move to, they're looking for affordability. So check that for Philadelphia, but they're also looking for ease of lifestyle. To Natalia's point, they want one service that they can book all their tickets on. So mobility as a service. They want ease of paying city service bills. So having that be accessible, not having to go down to City Hall. And the very essence of smart cities is leveraging technology and data to make cities and systems more efficient. So, you know, smart cities is the basis of any kind of talent attraction and retention strategy I think cities have, is because you want to go where innovation is, and innovation is seen in the technology space. And so that's why it's such a critical component to growing cities and really keeping people in your city, is you're working to make it better for them and kind of adapt to what they want.
Thank you for adding that in. That was a great way to kind of wrap everything up together. So that was awesome. And Eloise, I'll put you back on the spot real quick, just kind of going into another question here. You know, inherently there are a lot of positives regarding smart city projects, and we're kind of hitting on those, and we will more so, but can you share some examples of challenges that you're also seeing in your work?
Absolutely. We are municipally owned, and so it means that sometimes it's challenging doing business with us, and sometimes it's challenging innovating, because the other thing is we're a belts and suspenders, safety first company, so we don't like to take risks. You know, we like the sure bet. So when you talk about things like smart cities and coming up with innovative new approaches, sometimes when you deal with entities like PGW, there's just a lot of roadblocks and you know, things that you have to go through because people don't necessarily want to change. So I think that is probably the biggest thing that I've run into, the biggest obstacle.
Yeah, I think in our conversations, each and every one of you have talked about cities being risk adverse. So we'll give you a couple of examples. And Natalia, I'll go back to the question to you. So again, what are some of the challenges that you've seen in your work? And you've done different scales, so I'm sure you can give us some great examples.
Yeah, no, actually, I use this example around the world. I learned a lot in Philadelphia. And one of them was the green building movement. You know, Van Jones and a lot of your colleagues, Christine Knapp, a bunch of us were really pushing, this was 15 years ago, for the green building movement and green jobs, and how, you know, this was going to help get jobs. How do we, because the legislation has changed, and so prices of electricity was going to go up and gas was going to go up. And so we wanted to weatherize homes, right? And so we felt that, you know, Pennsylvania got the most money because we fought, and we kept fighting for the WAP money, for weatherization programs to train more people. But this took a while. I mean, I was almost, you know, thrown off the Comcast building. Great friends. But because we were doing the first green building event, and I think some folks weren't really happy about it because it was going to change the way we were doing things in Philadelphia. And so I think that some of the things that we should have done better, which I did bring, I brought a bunch of people from California to train people, the Carpenters Union, to how to build a green home, because we had to start with education. And before we do anything, we can't just put policies without getting the citizen at the center. The citizen has to be able to understand what is happening. And that means everyone. That means the workers, that means the mothers, that means the kids. Everyone has to be able to understand that these new regulations, these new things that are happening will affect them, not only in the short term, but in the long term. And so I think that experience, I've always, I love it because a few years after, everyone was building green buildings, and we were doing energy efficient systems in place, putting them in place. But people weren't happy about this. But it takes time, and I think it takes a lot of a collaborative approach. That's one of the things I learned about planning at University of Pennsylvania was the fact that it was all about bringing the stakeholders to the table. And it's not just the same old stakeholders. It has to be, different people that you never thought, entrepreneurs, that you never thought, not just the same people that you survey constantly. I brought in SurveyMonkey for the first time to the DVRPC, and they're looking at me like, "What are you thinking?" I'm like, "Well, 100 people that we survey is not enough. How about 5,000 people?" And so I should have invested in SurveyMonkey way back then, 10, 12 years ago. But it's about how do you create the best data and how the people actually can use that data for coming back to the government to really hold them accountable, but at the same time, how the citizen can use that data in a very private way that is protective, but how that citizen understands that their data is very valuable and what that data implies across all city services. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've given Emily some great segue into some challenges that you had in the city of Philadelphia. We'll go over to Emily.
Where do I start? No, I mean, I don't think these are necessarily unique to smart city projects. I think these are unique to being a change maker within a space like a city. So you have the education at all scales, as Natalia spoke of. You have the culture changes that have to happen, as Eloise mentioned. You have the buy-in that's necessary at a variety of levels and the risk absorption that needs to happen. And along with that, you have the capacity challenges. That's something we experience a lot in the city is, this sounds great, but I already have a full plate. I don't have time to try something new and innovative. One of the things that I've run into recently is the actual understanding of how to use data to make better decisions. So that goes back to the education side of things is, great, we have this data. What do we actually do with it? How do we add value to the data? And then cost and scalability are the last on my list. A lot of people think smart cities and they think big dollars need to happen in order to implement and kind of deploy an idea or pilot something. That's not the case. We've proven that with our pitch and pilot program, where we've executed 4 different pilots with a $34,000 or less budget line item. But the scalability then becomes a problem. How do we ensure that we can scale it up to the city and make it citywide instead of just kind of neighborhood or area specific?
Awesome. Great. And taking outside companies and bringing them into the conversation, we'll kind of go back over to Natalia, because this was a whole new word for me, was disruptive tech. And the disruptive tech companies and organizations that you partner with, they represent US and global innovators looking to present solutions to industries and city planners to show them how they may be able to be more efficient or more environmentally sustainable in their operations. Can you give us 1 or 2 examples of a tech company successfully collaborating with a city partnership, maybe recently?
Sure. There's a great little company. It's led by a woman called Polkadot Sky Software. They're one of the companies that is part of our accelerator, which is the Smart City Works Accelerator, based in Washington, D.C. It's one of the few in the country. But it's about bringing efficiency in the waste department. So it was working with the city of Washington, D.C. We introduced them to the city of Baltimore. And that's a small one. Now you think about the ones that like IBM. Food right now is really important. Supply chain, food access, especially during COVID, right? And how your home, your smart home, so your home becomes smarter in a way because you stay at home now. So you're all these things that you never thought they were working. Now they're working better at home. And so, companies like IBM looked at how do you bring not only from we talk about the idea of farm to table, right? Of doing things organically, but how about table to farm? How about the waste cycle that we have that it's not working? And that's not just about people just, putting their food waste into a little bucket. People that have to understand the entire cycle of picking this up, how much this is going to cost. It's a burden in the city. How can we actually figure out a system where it's economically feasible? Because we can't, we need to make sure that we're not misspending taxpayers' money. So it's large companies and small companies, and I think what's important that I learned from working in the federal government is that we actually got large companies to mentor small companies through a mentorship program. If they wanted to sell to the U.S. government, they had to go ahead and 23% of that contract has to go to a small business. A woman-owned company, a minority-owned company, a veteran-owned company, and so on. The city of Philadelphia, and I've been talking about this in Europe, left and right, because here it's like only 2%. Like the city of Philadelphia could do something like that, encouraging people to really get, the startups or the small businesses to go on under those RFPs and provide innovative ideas. That would be key. I mean, another thing that we did was competitions, and we didn't give a lot of money. We said, this is some of the things that are not working in the Department of Health and the Department of Energy. Bring your ideas and how do you create more efficient systems or bring that technology to the government. So I've always been between government and the private sector, but it's this relationship that we really need to nurture and we really need to elevate. And I think that's the role of a government. And Emily, I know that you're trying to do a lot of that. I know it's not easy. But there's some really amazing companies. There's especially in the last 10 years, a lot of the mobility company, a lot of the sharing. We didn't used to have a sharing economy until the last 10 years. And that was done because we were able to open our data, right? So a lot of this data, one of the first things that Obama did was, say, we're going to go ahead and have this data available. And a lot of the sharing economy companies, Airbnb, Lyft, Uber, all these companies got started. So what are the type of policies that we want to go ahead and have that can enable innovative companies? Like your question is, which are the cool companies that are coming up to help us? There's tons out there, but we just need to open the door, of course, in a way that we can actually vet them through, in a way that they can play in the sandbox of the city. Just an idea.
It's perfect. No, it's perfect segue for Emily to talk more about her pitch and pilot program.
Yes, and I will try not to ramble because this is when I always get really excited.
Yeah.
So one of our key areas of focus over the past year has been developing and launching our pitch and pilot program, which is at the very essence a process that provides a clear and transparent way for private sector innovators and entrepreneurs and technologists to partner with the city, right? We want to create that pipeline. So we leverage the Pitch and Pilot Working Group, which is a total of 14 members. It's composed of advisory committee members and working group members. Eloise is one of our fabulous members of both the working group and the Pitch and Pilot Working Group. And we solicit ideas basically that reflect both the Kennedy administration priorities, but also what we know the community needs and has interest in. So we utilize our citizen surveys that we take each year to also kind of drill down in focus areas. We then find a topic, issue a call for solution. The working group reviews the process or the submitted proposals and select solutions. We have a pitch event where we take about a third of the applications. They pitch to the working group. Then we select a solution provider and go under contract with them. And this is all about within a month or two. We issue the call for solutions for a month, and then within the next month, we select a solution provider and get under contract, which is actually pretty fast moving for a city government, and we're really proud of that. And to your point of earlier questions, this is a really valuable tool that we have within our toolkit, our Smart City Toolkit, because it allows us to both add capacity to our colleagues by supporting them and addressing a challenge that they have, right? But also absorbing some of that risk, because we say, listen, this is our budget, we're managing this project. If it fails, it's on us, not on you. But if it's successful, let's talk about how we can scale it up. So our first challenge was focused on supporting the city's zero waste by 2035 target. Our second was focused on increasing access and appeal to tap water. And we're now working on our third call for solution, which we're hoping to launch before the end of the year. But the part that I'm going to ramble on really quickly is a disruptive technology solution that we accepted for our first call for solutions around zero waste. It was a pilot we chose to do with a Dutch systems thinking firm called Metabolic, and it really laid the foundation for what we hope will eventually be a circular construction and demolition economy here in Philadelphia. So talk about like a very set in their ways industry. We're bringing in a technology that literally can determine what is in the waste stream and how we can add value to that and close the loop for use of those materials. And so for those of you who don't know, I always, again, definitions, I'm queen of defining things, but in very simple way, circular economy is very much right now a European policy topic, I would say. It's coming largely from the Netherlands. It literally means taking our traditional linear model of make, use, and waste and closing that loop and trying to keep resources in in a stream basically at their highest value for as long as possible before getting rid of them. And we want to essentially decouple economic growth from consumption so we can design waste out of the system. And the key thing for me is that all of this is underpinned by digital strategies, and that's why smart cities is relevant. So essentially what we did was we took an urban mining tool, which is literally looking for resources within the city and not requiring virgin materials. So we're mining for resources in our city. It's one that's been applied to the Netherlands. We're the first city in the United States to have a tool like this, and they adapted it to Philadelphia's construction and demolition waste stream. So they took information and data from our license and inspection permitting process. They looked at types of buildings that we have. So Dutch buildings tend to have a bit more wood in their waste stream. We have more bricks because of our older buildings. And they were able to kind of give a data-driven insight into the demand and supply of material streams for years to come for the city. So we can start to further encourage the construction and demolition sector to reduce waste and minimize demand for new construction materials. So it's pretty cool. We were able to identify where like a large amount of our C&D waste was coming from, which is small scale projects in the north of Philadelphia, but that there's demand for construction projects and resources in downtown Philadelphia. And that the 5 highest materials in our waste stream are concrete, limestone, bricks, steel, iron, and wood. And the best part about this, to be honest, is one, it's creating jobs. It's not only looking at how buildings are deconstructed, but how we construct buildings so they can be deconstructed. But it's also tying these triple bottom line concepts into smart cities, where we're looking at the environment. This reduces our environmental footprint. It's social, it's creating jobs, living wage jobs. And then economic, it's creating a more resilient economy because we're closing the loop, the supply chain that we need for construction, which is critical to recovery, economic recovery. So if anybody else is interested, they can always reach out to me and I can give them more information, but that's the shortest I could keep it.
I think that was pretty good. Yeah, that's amazing. There's just more to come, and that's what's so exciting about all of these missions and initiatives. And Eloise, I also want to, since you work so closely on some of the Smart City PHL kind of committee, what are some of your priorities that you're pushing forward within PGW? And do you have any projects that you're super excited to talk about as well?
Yes, I guess like every company, even pre-pandemic, a lot of our priorities have to do with learning to do more with less, frankly. And that's where innovation really comes in and can help us with our limited resources. Sometimes the best, most exciting projects aren't the biggest ones. So I'm going to talk about Emily's favorite project that I'm working on. I'm trying to make happen. PGW owns a number of properties around the city, and a lot of them are in food deserts where there's limited access to food. So that's one problem. And the other thing is, just imagine if you could buy, I don't know, watermelon all year round, no matter what the season, and you could buy watermelon that was grown in Philly. It would be amazing. But obviously, it would require that whoever's growing it is able to control the environment. So I found this really cool company. Natalia was talking about cool companies. We found this really cool startup who is trying to get these urban farm containers out there. They're basically about 40 feet. You can get 20-foot ones or 40-foot ones, and they contain like an ecosystem where you can grow produce. They use hydroponics, so there's no dirt or bugs or chemicals or anything like that. It's a really amazing skill for somebody to learn. So what we want to do is, since the most expensive part about controlled environment agriculture is the power, the energy to be able to, control the environment and the lighting all the time, we believe that we can use natural gas to cut the cost of that. So we're going to actually, hopefully, be able to get permission from legal to take one of those containers, put it on one of our properties. It's in a food desert, and do some engineering, come up with a perfect, exquisite gas-powered solution that'll cut the cost of those things. And we're going to have training so that people will learn how to work, and do hydroponics. And we'll be able to provide some low-cost organic food. So I think that's like one of my most exciting projects.
Absolutely. That's extremely exciting and something to be truly proud of. Of course, smart cities and technology and the time that we're in, we can't not talk about COVID. So let's bring COVID to the conversation and keep it real. So Natalia, since COVID, how is the tech space being pressured to respond? Have any of your clients had to kind of pivot their focus and some of the things that they were doing, and now they have to completely go in the next direction?
Actually, all of them, to tell you the truth. We all had to go ahead and just look at a different perspective. It's been a learning curve, and I think most important, one of the sectors that I was very surprised. I'm a transportation planner by background, and I never thought it would be so popular. But right now, literally logistics, everything that has to do with logistics and supply chain and delivery within just faster. How do we look at just the technology behind education? I mean, that's a big one. We think about the pressure. We all looking at there's no real pollution right now because there's no planes flying anywhere right now, except there's a lot of trucking. So it's a different perspective. There's a lot of pressure at the ports right now. That hasn't stopped. But when it comes to busing kids around or getting kids to look at playing the playground, our entire perspective of what our footprint is during the pandemic has changed, right? And so literally, I think that most of our clients in the supply chain world are just, if you can invest in supply chain, that's logistics. Because I was just astounded at how much money they're raising in order for them to be able to get things to people on time, because people are not patient. When you are at home, you're less patient. But one of the things I did wanted to bring up a little bit away from that question is, just because we have been able to create better efficiency, we've had 8 to 15% lower disease burden. We have had, just by creating more efficient processes and using innovation, we've actually cut our commute between 15 and 30 minutes per day. We've saved 25 to 80 liters of water per person per day. And we've had one of my big things is faster emergency response times. We really, when it comes to coordinating movement, if you look at what was happening in California, it's happening everywhere, is that response rate. How do we get our women and men in that area to be safe, but also to be able to create the best service. And so we don't look at that sometimes. People just attack or just say, well, I can't believe that all that is happening. Well, it takes a lot of logistical maneuvering, and if you can add more efficiency, then we can have more people saved, and more people can save more lives. So
yeah, absolutely. Just incorporating technology. When you talk about supply chain, when it comes to certain things, I kind of crack up, because supply chain, if you think about toilet paper and paper towels, it's kind of happening in every sort of supply chain across every sort of way. So it's about the exact same thing. Eloise, I also, you've done a lot, especially with some of the IT infrastructure that you've had to adapt. Can you share some examples of how you had to create and implement those new technologies?
Absolutely. It's funny. I think I'm probably going to talk about something that Natalia and Emily hit on, which is the human side of it. Because what happened, just like every other company, when we realized that people were going to have to work from home, and part of why we can is because of that phone system upgrade that I was telling you. I screwed up part of it, but the main part we got right. Thank God that happened, because it enabled the call center to be able to work from home. So what we found was very quickly we could get people working remotely. But what we're working on now is getting them to work well. So, it's just like that phone system where both systems, the add-on and the new system, had that, virtual hold feature, but one did it better than the other. Now that we have everybody at home, we're really trying to deal with the human side of things. So, what we did was we rolled out kind of tech in a box things. As soon as things started happening in March, we surveyed our employees, and we realized, some people don't even have internet access. So, we came up with a solution for that. But obviously now you have novice remote people out there that need to do mission critical work. So, we've done things like built an intranet site just for remote working, with all kinds of how-to and self-help guides. We've had to really step up our game in terms of our help desk, because, we were getting like help, from people at home. And then even our help desk, they're not used to supporting some of the issues that we're coming across. So we've really had to step up the human side of our game and get better at make sure that people feel comfortable doing those jobs. We've surveyed people 3 or 4 times and just asked them, what kind of challenges are you running into? Basically what we're asking is, what can we do to assist you? What can we do to help you? And it's amazed me how people really have stepped up, and they appreciate just being asked. Because I think that this remote work, I don't think we're going to be able to completely put the genie back in the bottle, whether there's a vaccine or not. So I think we're going to all, and even trying to equip managers with the tools that they need to feel comfortable being responsible for people who are working, who are not in their line of sight, has also been very interesting. And we've had to come up with some tools, just to make people really just feel more comfortable with this new reality that we're all dealing with. So I think we can't say enough about the human side of things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's a kind of a perfect closeout, really. Emily, you were interviewed in an article, the State Scoop, kind of this past spring. And like I said, it's a great way to close out. You stated that the pandemic is a test run for city resiliency.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you could just kind of explain that a little bit more, like I said, I think it's a good way to kind of close out the conversation.
Yeah, I think what we experienced with COVID hitting us is an example of what we would experience if we had a massive climate situation as well. It showed the weaknesses, it rather amplified the weaknesses that we were dealing with that need to be addressed. So what we saw in Philadelphia, besides a shortage of toilet paper and paper towels and apparently flour, was challenges with connectivity and realizing how drastic our digital divide is. So not only was it external, with a quarter of our population not having access to internet or appropriate technology, but it was also internal. So to what Eloise mentioned, we quickly had to pivot literally, within a day's time to working from home. And in the Office of Innovation and Technology, where I'm located, we really just had to scramble to make sure we had enough computers for people who needed computers, that everybody was connected, that everybody knew how to use our systems. We work off of Teams. We're still doing Teams educational workshops to kind of help people adapt to the new technology and whatnot. So we had internal and external digital divide challenges, which has been a huge push. The racial inequities that we experienced with our city were exacerbated and amplified, and those are things that we're working to address as a city. So I just think, it laid bare some of our weaknesses, and what Natalia was talking about in terms of kind of economic systems and the ability to withstand these shocks to the systems is the definition of our ability to bounce back. And that's something that, Smart Cities is really trying to help with, is how can we, similar to the urban mining, like how can we create a regional ecosystem that supplies us with what we need, whether it's food, construction materials, or whatnot, so that we're not reliant on China to get a lot of our supplies when we have a massive shutdown, which means then jobs are lost, city services aren't able to be delivered, all of those kind of dominoes effects. So I just think this is a great example of challenges that cities face that are citywide, that technology can be a solution to, and data. And this was just a case run, so we're taking it very seriously.
Absolutely. I appreciate each of you weighing in on the current situation, and there are many things we've learned during this period of pandemic, and one of them being how important and impactful technology solutions will be to all of our everyday lives. I mean, that's kind of like the biggest takeaway. We are at the closeout of our panel. And again, I just want to thank our panelists. You have no idea how much they've helped me and have taken more time out of their day to be able to contribute to the conversation. And I've enjoyed getting to know all of you via Zoom, of course, social distancing, and to work with each of you. So thank you again for today, and thank you for everyone else for joining us. At the end of the webinar, there will be a quick survey, so please do fill that out, and everyone enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you so much.